Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Today is Season 4, Episode 64, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
And I am John Keir. We're going to be wrapping up Season 4 of the podcast tonight. It is late on February 26th. It is a Wednesday. And before we turn the page to the off-season and we start looking ahead to the 2020 season, we figured it would be appropriate to take one last look at what was the Steelers' 2019 season. And we'll get into that, of course, but it's been a couple weeks since we podcasted, so obviously a lot has gone on. Even in the NFL offseason, there's still a ton going on. And in February, as we knew beforehand, there was a critical date in the recovery process for Ben Roethlisberger. And Austin, as we saw on Twitter, he is now throwing again. And it was reported originally that his first milestone in the recovery would be throwing tennis balls and other light objects. But in that YouTube video, he was giving a soft toss of a football. So believe it or not, he actually was able to progress a further step and was able to go straight from not throwing at all to throwing the football. So obviously that's pretty encouraging, and it's estimated to be around 2 to 3 months until he's pretty much back to himself. So I'd say, all things considered, that was about as good of news as you could have expected to hear from that.
Yeah, man, all the Steelers need is a competent quarterback for next year, and we good. So it's really good to see Ben is recovering well and probably a little faster than expected.
Yeah, and Steelers general manager Kevin Colbert, who's at the NFL Scouting Combine, spoke to the media. He said that he believes Roethlisberger could be even better next season coming off of his elbow surgery. I've kind of heard both sides to this argument, and I kind of want to get your thoughts, Austin, because traditionally when you think about a 38-year-old man getting major surgery on a body part like this, you typically think the recovery process is, going to be long and it's going to be difficult for the player to ever return to form. But the advancements made in medical technology over the past 20-ish plus years have really given light to improved performance, and especially when you consider that if the elbow is back to its previous standard because of how good medical technologies and surgeries are, when you factor in that Roethlisberger basically got the entire year off, do you think it does make sense that he could possibly even better than he was at his last strongest point in 2018? Or do you think that it's more likely that he won't reach where he was in 2018 and he'll just be kind of closer to a game manager type of quarterback at this point, a guy who's continuing to decline, if you will?
I think it's possible for either or, but I lean towards that there's a better chance that he's not as good as he was, but it really could go either way. Having the year off to rest and relax could go either way. I mean, look at Le'Veon Bell. He had a year to rest and relax, and it didn't really go his way. There was other factors for that, but regardless, it's just I think that there's a better chance that he's not as good, but that might not matter all too much because I'm not saying that he might be. I'm not even saying he'll be bad. I just think it's going to be tough to be as good or better than where he was at in 2018, especially with the surgery. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but I am still hopeful that with that year off and that rest that could be good for him because, even though he's never missed more than 4 games in a season before this year, we know as well as anybody that most of his career, especially early on, he was taking a ton of big hits. And even though that's been greatly reduced over the past half decade, it still adds up. Like he was still on pace to become the most sacked quarterback of all time last season had he remained healthy. And that's after spending basically 5 seasons barely getting touched. So at some point that adds up, even when you're talking about a physical specimen like Roethlisberger. Obviously it's all hearsay right now. We won't know until we know. So it's just kind of speculation on our part. But it's something, obviously, that all of Steelers Nation is going to be paying attention to because, as we learned last year, even Ben Roethlisberger, not at full strength, probably could have been the best quarterback on this team. And I find it interesting that so many seem to think that his 2018 season was just clear decline and like he wasn't that good. I understand that a lot of this is volume based, but he did lead the league in passing yards. And even though he led the league in interceptions, it was the lowest number for a league leader in interceptions in a full season in the modern era. He only threw 16. Like, that's half of what Jameis Winston threw this year.
Man, that's crazy. I don't really get it. Like, when you throw for 5,000 yards, even if it is volume, like, that's impressive. It's not happened many times, that milestone. I'll be the first to admit that it wasn't like an elite crazy season. It wasn't like Peyton Manning in 2013 or something like that. It was just a solid season where he got a lot of reps, but like didn't look like he was visibly declining. I would definitely not say that.
Yeah, to me, it was just another year. I mean, he wasn't We've seen the last few years where he's had stretches where he's been kind of streaky. Like, I felt like the first half of 2017, I remember with that 5-pick game in Jacksonville, and the first half of 2018, it felt like he was kind of slow, but then he heated up and he was fine. And in the first half of 2016, he was on fire, and then partially due to injuries to other receivers, meaning guys like Kobe Hamilton were starting alongside Antonio Brown. He didn't have a 300-yard passing game for over half a year. But, the last few years of his career, he's been prone to streakiness, and I don't think that means he's necessarily in decline. I just think it's something that happens. He's always been kind of a streaky guy anyways.
Yeah, it's always how he's been. It's like back when he had those games against Baltimore and the Colts where he threw 5 touchdowns in each, which is crazy freaking stats in both games, back to back, and but I think before that he had thrown I don't want to misquote this. I remember the game before the 2 5-touchdown games wasn't that great.
They were actually 6 touchdown games, and you might be thinking of the game after because that was the Jets game.
Yeah, I might have it all confused. See, I have the touchdowns confused. I have when the bad game occurred confused.
But the point still persists is that he had the two arguably best games of his career, and then he put up a dud against the Jets. So I mean, which was the worst of those teams that the Steelers played in that 3-game stretch. But anyways, we're gonna have to take this by ear, but it's just something to think about. And some other moves that the Steelers made, they finally signed a wide receivers coach. So we thought it was going to be, I forgot his name, the guy from South Carolina, but it turned out that it's going to be the former New York Giants receiver Ike Hilliard, who was most recently with the Redskins and helped develop the young Terry McLaurin, who was a very good receiver for the Redskins this past year. Since 2000, there have only been 2 teams with 3 rookie wide receivers to have 30 or more catches and 300 or more receiving yards. One of whom being the 2014 Jaguars and the other being the Redskins last year. So I'm assuming he was since you wrote that up, he was on the Jaguars coaching staff in 2014, huh?
Yeah, obviously.
So what do you think about it?
Disappointed that it wasn't Jericho Cotchery. I was really looking forward to that. I'm a big Jericho Cotchery fan. He was also someone in the running, especially after the South Carolina guy dropped out. But regardless, I do like this hire. I do, especially after seeing what he did with a bunch of rookie wide receivers. I think he could be a pretty solid wide receiver coach, and I think he is an upgrade.
Definitely. Not that Ray Sherman was bad or anything, but he had impossible shoes to fill after the death of Darryl Drake. And on top of that, I'm not sure it was something he necessarily wanted to do, as evidenced by the fact that he didn't return, right?
I think so. It sounds like it. But, I mean, we might not know. Maybe Sherman wasn't good, and maybe we'll see wide receivers return back to normal. I mean, actually, Ben Roethlisberger is probably going to play. That makes a world of difference. But, well, I guess we really still won't know if Ray Sherman was good or bad last year.
It is kind of mired by the fact that the Steelers were playing with scattershot quarterback play most of 2019. But at the same time, I don't think you can really say I don't really think you're going leaps and bounds to say that outside of Deontay Johnson, no one else on the team had a really consistent year. James Washington had a stretch where he was pretty solid, but he was also quiet other times. Juju was relatively good early on, but then disappeared from week 8 on. So I'm sure Roethlisberger will help all that, but these guys need to step up too.
Oh, for sure. I felt like James Washington showed a lot of promise at the end of the year, but I'm really looking for Juju to step up coming with Ben Roethlisberger coming back because he didn't really have a lot of good games in 2019, but hopefully he steps up.
Who do you think needs to have who's more in need of a big 2020 season, James Conner or Juju Smith-Schuster? They're both in contract years, so this is huge for both of them.
I'm going to say James Conner. I think that James Conner needs to have a bigger year because I felt like he hasn't proven that he could stay healthy. Which for a big year for him, if he could stay healthy for 16 games, that would be a big year for him. I mean, it's obviously how productive he is does matter, but
when he's healthy, he has been productive.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
When he has been healthy, he has been productive. That's the thing.
Exactly. So that's like tied together. Like I believe in James Conner. I know he can be good, but like he needs to be available. The best ability is availability. So I think that he has got to have the bigger 2020 season compared to Juju. What do you think?
I agree with you. I do think Juju. I think they're both going to have a bounce back year. I guess the team seems to have a lot of faith in James Conner. Not that they don't in Smith-Schuster. But I don't know. I feel like part of it is James Conner probably rushed himself back a lot last year. I kind of got that feeling, didn't you? Especially that first Browns game. You remember he just didn't look right from the start, and then he got banged up. I feel like he's a guy that he wants to be in there so bad, and sometimes it's to his own detriment. Kind of like what Mike Mitchell did a few years back. And I think that if he kind of tones it down, maybe he's not training enough in the offseason, maybe he's training too much. But I think if he, kind of reforms himself in the offseason and just kind of takes a different approach, I think he'll do himself a lot of favors. And I think maybe avoiding contact is something that he needs to look into more often because Jerome Bettis did this as well. His first couple of years in the NFL with the Rams, they called him the battering ram. I mean, he would seek out physical contact. And while he still did that at times with the Steelers, after a couple of years, he had to practice in non-contact jerseys at times because of all the pain he was in. And he learned that eventually you have to be able to make these guys miss because you take too many hits. And while Le'Veon Bell has taken his hits and he's gotten his injury problems in his NFL career, one thing that you can definitely say that he's been better at than James Conner has been the ability to avoid big hits. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily it. I'm sure there's luck involved, but it's clearly some sort of skill that he has that's been very good for him.
It really has. It's going to be tough though. Still for Conner, it's just he hasn't shown that he can. It's just repeating myself, but it's just I feel like Conner hasn't been put in position to really like be as injured as he has been. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Can you say it again? I thought you had cut out for a second.
I feel like Conner hasn't been in enough positions where he hasn't been in enough positions where like he should be as hurt as often as he has. Like I feel like every time I see James Conner hurt, it's just like, oh shoot, what happened? He's getting up, he's limping, he's on the ground, and it's just like it didn't look like
kind of a freaky thing.
Doesn't look like it's ever like, oh wow, he took a nasty hit and he's totally gonna come off after that. But it's usually just like, oh, the pile's getting up and James Conner's on the floor. I don't know. It just feels like he really has just got to prove that he could stay healthy. That's all that matters. Whatever it takes in this offseason, I don't know how you improve your health in that sense, but that's what he should be doing.
Well, perhaps we are analyzing it too much, but it's definitely a very important factor. And we'll shift gears here to the fact that Browns defensive end Myles Garrett was recently reinstated by the NFL after serving his suspension for hitting Mason Rudolph in the head with his own helmet. Garrett shortly then doubled down on his accusation, was given, in my opinion, a very biased panel and interview by ESPN to discuss it as if it were a fact that Mason Rudolph had called Garrett a stupid N-word. And a league investigation did exonerate Rudolph, and there's, in my opinion, has been virtually nothing to really suggest that Garrett isn't lying. I know that there have been people that have come out and said, like John Dorsey, that he did bring up this accusation, but I just think I believe that Garrett's course of action, apologizing to Rudolph the day after, and things of that nature are kind of not indicative of someone who, heard what he's saying that he heard. You know what I mean, Austin?
I understand. It's just not something that you wait on. It's not something that society takes very lightly when you say racist remarks like that, especially especially on TV and stuff like that. Like, that is not going to fly. And if it had happened, you would have heard it right after the game immediately. There's just not enough evidence to back up Myles Garrett's claims, and everything doesn't line up. If that happened, it would have been known as soon as the game ended, which was 5 minutes later. There would have been no holding back, because Garrett had to know he looked like the bad guy. He had to. It would have immediately okay. That's a different argument. Maybe a word shouldn't lead to violence, regardless of what the word is, but it would have made him look a lot better right in the beginning, and he chose not to, and that to me tells me all I need to know. And I don't think he said it. People are going to continue believing that it happened anyway, because why not? Because it's woke, but regardless, it probably did not happen.
Well, regardless, it's biased coverage by ESPN gave Mike Tomlin a reason to go on ESPN's First Take, and he ripped ESPN and defended Rudolph. Basically, he said that Rudolph got fined $50,000 essentially for getting beat up, and I'm proud of the way Mike Tomlin stood up for Rudolph. It was something that he needed to do, and it speaks volumes among the African American sports community, because he's one of, if not the most influential African American in the sport right now, at least in terms of head coaches. And I think that really spoke volumes, and it was important that he did it, and I'm glad that he did do it.
And Tomlin doesn't really speak to media much, so when he does, it's got to be important. And here we are. He's defending his quarterback. Who would have thought?
So it seems that the Browns were not happy that Myles Garrett went out and did this, so hopefully this will be the last time we hear about it for a while, but I have a feeling this isn't going to go away.
Probably not. No, in the media.
So, with the NFL Combine having gone underway, the Steelers have already met with a couple of players. Do you have any information of that?
And I met with TCU wide receiver Jalen Rieger, and oh boy, I can't wait to try and pronounce this name. Missouri tight end Albert Okwuegbunam. Okwuegbunam.
Albert O.
Albert O, yeah. Albert O, I will learn it. I eventually learned Olasunkanmi so I can learn this one. If it becomes important anyway. When we look at them, but I bet these names will be names we look at in Season 5 since they were so early. We should be looking at almost all the tight ends. So I'm sure we will be looking at Mr. Albert O over then. And if I look at him, I promise I will learn his name by then. I just looked at it, I was like, I'm going to try my hardest.
We'll get there.
It's probably be funny to pronounce it.
We'll get there. All in good time. Anyhow, obviously the NFL Combine is the big news right now, but besides that, there has been the ongoing discussion of the new CBA. It expires in 13 months, and both sides are trying to get a deal done as of right now. The NFL owners put forth an interesting proposal. The players are split on it, and we'll get to that later. But there have been several changes. The biggest, and we'll get to all of them, but the biggest are an increase in the playoffs. So we're adding one team to each playoff. So there'd be 7 teams in each conference. The top seed in each conference gets the bye. So that's it. And then there's 3 first-round games. And then they're also going to be adding a 17th game and a second bye week for each team. So we'll address each issue after that, kind of in order. But I wanted to get your thoughts on those initial changes in this proposed CBA.
So I wasn't a fan of the 17 playoffs. I really feel like we're gonna end up with a lot of 8 and 9 teams in the in the playoffs. Going back, there was going to be a lot of 9 and 7 teams because obviously we can't predict for the 17-game season now. A lot of people went back and looked at which teams would have made it, and even when I found out Pittsburgh would have been the most helped team, Mike Tomlin would have never missed the playoffs in his career. I still wasn't a fan of it. I lost my train of thought. What was I just saying? I'm so out of it today. I'm so sorry. I remember my point. My point was, when you look at it, there are going to be a lot of 9-win teams winning, but would have been more 8-8 teams helped into the playoffs, and that would have been 2 Pittsburgh teams, including last year in 2013. That would have made it more 8-8 teams than 10-6 teams that would have made it. It's just, to me, it just points to that we're going to get an 8-9 team in the playoffs at some point. It might not happen the first year that it's implemented. I still don't really like that. I don't know. I think I'm just going to have to deal with it. I don't think there is an answer for that at the moment. So I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping that there's some math behind it that, no, there's no way we're going to get an 8-9 team because there won't be enough teams that are 8-9 in any given season. There will always be teams that are 9-8 to take those extra spots. But I'm not hopeful for it. I'm waiting for people to say the math checks out and that we'll never have a losing team in the playoffs. But at the moment, I have high fears that it's going to happen.
So your main concern is watering down the playoffs, basically.
Yeah, it's just like adding an extra game of football where the team might get destroyed is not fun. Like, we would have seen Chiefs Steelers this year. Would that have been fun? I mean, maybe to see the Steelers in the playoffs and then home on the Hodges shootout. Because I don't know about you, but I really didn't.
Yeah, see what I was originally opposed to it, and I still kind of am. But I think the thing is, unless if you're sticking with 16 games, I think you almost have to add another playoff team, and here's why. Teams are already basically at that boiling point where they're just barely playing enough meaningful games. You have teams, even like the worst teams like the Bengals, who were already playing out the stretch in week 12 and beyond. Like, they were already pseudo tanking. And if you add another game, you're going to be ending a lot of team seasons even earlier in the year with more football to play. And by adding that extra wildcard team, you're giving teams more of a chance to stay in it for longer. I don't think you can do one without the other, if that makes sense. I think if you're going to add another game, you have to add this other team to keep more teams in it for longer. Otherwise, you're going to be, not only are you going to be watering down the playoffs, but you're going to be making it even, you're going to be making even more teams that are just basic, because you're already struggling to fill some stadiums with fans at the end of the season for teams that are terrible, and you want them to play another game. I think you're dangerously reaching a bad point if you don't add that other playoff team. It's not going to stop it, but it's going to counteract it a bit. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Sort of, kind of. But something on the other end, now that you only have one bye week, there's going to be the top teams. Let's say there's a team that's
you'd be adding
14-0.
You'd be adding 2 bye weeks because you'd have 2 in total, or is that kind of what you're saying?
I'm sorry, did I say bye week? I meant first round bye.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. So you're going to be saying that the first round bye could essentially, the best team in the league or in that conference could have the first round bye wrapped up by like week 15, and then they have 3 weeks where they don't play. Essentially,
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Like, if there's a team that goes like 13-0, and maybe by that time the next closest team has like 3 losses, like I would give up yet because of the 17-game season. I'm still trying to do the math now here because now I'm working with a 17-game season. 14-0, and the other team has 4 losses. Like, you could be done. You could just be done, and then you're rested for the playoffs. I mean, it would be stupid now because, I mean, not having your players play for 3 weeks, but like, I feel like that waters it down because, like, if they are playing, they're not going to be they might be playing for like a few quarters. So I feel like it makes it even worse because it could water it down at the top. If you know you're going to secure first round bye, like you're not going to have like possibly the best team in the league playing for the last 3 weeks of the season. Now, I don't know. I feel like that it doesn't cancel each other out because I think that more teams fighting for that last spot is more important than the one team because it's not even guaranteed. You have to. This one team has to be really great. But now you're thinking like if there is a team that great and they just stop playing, like it is going to suck for the football world. Like it is going to impact.
Maybe they shouldn't then, because maybe they'd be even more.
Sorry.
I'm saying maybe they shouldn't stop playing then, because then maybe we saw how much rust affected a bunch of these teams in the playoffs this year. Maybe that's something that could become kind of a counteracting measure to it. I don't know. It's not perfect. It's definitely not. But I think the point is that I like it the way it is right now, but I think that the NFL sees these two things as hand in hand. Like I think they see them as a package deal.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think it makes sense too because your reasoning makes sense that it wants teams to fight till the very end for that last spot, and it delays the inevitable.
The other thing to consider is what to do with that extra game. Who do you play? And I like this, and I know we talked about this before. I'd like for each team to play a neutral site game. The one issue you have is that Jacksonville's already playing several games in London, so it's not quite that simple, but I wouldn't mind. So, like, for instance, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia playing maybe not every year, but every now and then playing at Beaver Stadium at Penn State, which is kind of halfway between the two cities. And that could all of a sudden become a huge game every year. Maybe you have the 49ers and Raiders playing well, I guess it's not as important now since the Raiders are in Las Vegas, but you know what I mean. Maybe you could get some interesting matchups there. I think that's the best way to, because I don't like the idea of having teams with 7 home games one year and then 9 the next year. How do you balance that out? Does one conference get 9 home games? Does the other get 7? I don't think that's good.
I like the neutral site game. I think that's the best idea because it could be an international game too. You go to Mexico. Steelers have a lot of ties to Ireland. I don't know if the game has ever been played in Ireland. Not that I remember that.
I think only exhibition games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could go international here. I mean, we already go to London, so why not? It's just I feel like there's so many options with the neutral site game that it should be considered. I personally vote for the international option for the NFL's purposes because I think it could expand their market a little bit more and kind of break into other places, which I know a lot of people would be against, but I like that idea. I think that there should be a neutral game for sure.
I would definitely like that as well. So those were the two main points, but there's a whole lot of other things going on. Where did you want to jump to next? Because there's obviously a ton going on.
So I think that our second favorite, I don't know if I'm speaking for you as well, but it is probably my second favorite, is that roster sizes will be increasing to 55 with 48 active on game day. And also relating to rosters is 3 players are now going to be eligible to be designated to return from IR pending the approval of this CBA. So there's more roster spots, more active players on game day, and if you're a heavily injured team. So obviously we've been talking about expanding the roster size for quite a while now. What do you think of this?
Oh yeah, I mean you're right. This is something we've touched on in the past, and we've both expressed that we'd be in favor of something like this, and I honestly wouldn't mind the roster sizes being even a little larger, but on top of that, you're including an increase in your practice squad a little bit, and I'm happy with the more the merrier. Obviously, I wouldn't want 70-man rosters like in college, but I think somewhere between 55 to 60 is perfect. I'm all in favor of getting more jobs, and I think that it's good to have I think it's good to be able to have guys returning from injured reserve. That's such a nice feature. It already seems weird to think that for the longest time when you went on IR, it was done. It was over. But now it doesn't have to be that way, and I think that this is another improvement. And it's their way of counteracting that extra game. in the name of player safety, which is just a sham since they're adding a 17th game that they really don't care. But we already knew that. But I do like the idea that they'd be expanding rosters, and you already said that you are too. So.
Yeah, man, it's a really good move. And speaking of expanding rosters, the active roster, the regular NFL roster isn't the only thing expanding. The practice squad is also expanding from 10 to 14 by 2022. In 2021, it's going to go up to 12. In 2022, it's going to go up to 14. And what's interesting is they're going to be allowing 2 unlimited accrued seasons players on the practice squad, meaning there will be 2 players that how many years they've been in the NFL will not matter. They could just hang and be on the practice squad. So you could have a veteran on your practice squad now, 2 of them. I'm a little confused because I couldn't find a specification. I don't know if one is coming in 2021, or if you get both in 2021 and you're just going to have 12, or if you get one in 2021 and one in 2022, or how that's going to work. But regardless, what do you think of that?
I think that's pretty interesting. Now, do you know if that number includes the International Pathway Program like it does not right now?
I honestly don't know. I was looking into that as well. I was trying to find it because I was thinking of Christian Skylar Williamson when I was looking at this. I could not find it, but honestly, I really like that. I really like being able to have a veteran hang around on the practice squad. Like guys like maybe Marcus Tucker might still be with the Steelers that way because they really wanted Marcus Tucker to be something, and he was always with them. So I like this. I like that idea.
Gonna cut Artie Burns and put him back on the practice squad.
Yeah, dude. There we go. I mean, he can make a little bit more money now. They were also raising practice squad salary to $10.5K per week. But I'll also talk about practice squad because it should probably be mentioned here.
And on top of that, you had also written down here that they'll be able to shuffle a few players up and down from the active roster without technically being waived, kind of like protecting players like Tuzar Skipper and Fred Johnson, which the Steelers wish they could have this year.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing too. I really like that idea. That it's sort of like basketball, or I don't really know how it works in hockey, but in basketball you get like 2-way contracts where like you can just send them up and down. There's a time limit for that, but I like the idea that a team can't just steal a guy that you really like, that you saw potential in, and like you through injury you're forced to make a cut. I mean, Steelers were lucky to get Tuzar Skipper back, but Fred Johnson's gone, so like, and he's with the Bengals now, and he's probably never going to be let go because the Bengals don't have a offensive line. So it's a nice rule to have. So like in case of injury, that you have like a guy that you could just shuffle over.
Anything else going on with the CBA?
I don't know if anything else is really worth. Oh, another big thing. Cap is about to skyrocket. The salary cap in the next couple of years is going to go up and up. So there's more game. There's an extra game to generate the NFL money. And with expanded rosters, increasing salary, they are saying there are some rumors, not exactly true yet, that this year the salary cap is going to go from 200 to 230 to support the 17-game contracts, to support minimum salaries going up across the board, to support extra roster sizes, and to support practice squad spots. So don't get your hopes up that the $30 million that the Steelers can now afford Javon Hargrave and Bud Dupree, it's not going to be as much as it's not going to be $30 million extra dollars because of all the money and things going up. It does make it a little bit easier to retain Dupree though, but that's a big deal. And the salary cap should go up a lot more following the season after the 17-game money hits.
I gotcha. And the players would receive 48.5% of the entire revenue share, which is a slight increase in percentage for them. but it's still laughable. They were at a 50-50 split, I think, back in 2010. So the fact that they lost that kind of advantage is just kind of laughable. I think the players are in a bad spot here, and I think that they're going to accept because they just have a weak union, and I don't know, just it really feels like a mess for the players. It always does.
It really does. I don't know if we touched upon it, but the owners voted not unanimously to pass this, and then the NFLPA voted to pass it off to the players, but it was without recommendation, meaning they had less than 66% in favor of that. The NFLPA should have been against this. They should have been arguing with the owners more and stuff. So now it's up to the players. I don't have hope for the players. There's a lot of players that are backups, a lot of players that don't have much time in this league, and they're going to take what they can get. The Stars, of course, hate this. This isn't a good for the Stars at all. And they were able to fix some things for the Stars. They were able, and it kind of ruined it for some of the backup players, if I'm being honest. But there was an original thing in the contract that players whose contract run through a season with 17 games were to be compensated to a max of $250,000 each for the 17th game, which over a 16-game span, that would have been a $4 million contract, which obviously for Stars, it isn't that much, like when you're getting paid like Michael Thomas money or stuff like that. So it was renegotiated Tuesday that that wouldn't be in there. I realized I made an assumption. I think what is happening is that it will be a 17th of their 17th slice is what they'll be paid, or a normal game check for that extra 17th game to reflect their contract. Bottom tier players, like guys on vet minimums who would have gotten a good amount of money for that, now won't. So there have been things changed. Right now, this CBA is in the players' court, and I just don't have hope for them. Again, the NFLPA, that was the whole point of this, should have stopped it and should have gotten a little bit more out of this.
Well, let's look at each side. So the owners would be getting, obviously more money because more games. Another team in the playoffs, some more revenue for another playoff game. So there's that. Meanwhile, the players are going to be getting, what is that? No testing for marijuana. Is that what that is?
Yeah, no testing for. Well, they're still testing for marijuana. They just won't be suspended if they're.
Oh, if they test
with
positive.
some of the system.
I see. So there's that. There's a couple extra jobs, and that's about it. What happened to fighting for guaranteed contracts? What happened to fighting to get rid of the transition tag and the franchise tag? I don't see, like, if I'm the players, I understand it's difficult, but the victory of not being suspended for pot is such a minor victory for what they're supposedly going to be yielding in this CBA. It is such a convincing and decisive loss for them. Like, they need to, if you're not going to fight for all those things, at least fight for one of those things. Fight to get rid of, like, the franchise tag or something to make free agency truly free. You understand? Like, at least try. Like, this is terrible. This is awful.
Yeah. They also got minimum salaries up across the board, but, like, that's not
pinching
not
pennies.
Really good enough.
Like, it's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pennies on the dollar. And I don't see the need to necessarily. Now, obviously, the teams would like to because it will help with restructuring contracts to be able to get a deal done. But if you're the players, there's no need to rush to get a deal done. The current CBA doesn't expire for 13 months. What's the rush?
I guess the idea is that they were told they'd get more money heading towards them now if they approved it now. That's what they said. They were like, we'll increase salary cap for this, and you guys will be paid like now. So I guess that's what really influenced them.
And that money talks to them when they need their paychecks right away. We'll talk. So in any case, I'm sure we'll be talking about that more in the coming weeks. Let's transition now to stuff going on around the NFL. Tight end Greg Olsen signed with the Seattle Seahawks, so now the Seahawks have Will Dissly, Greg Olson and now Jacob Hollister, who broke out. And they also have Luke Wilson, our guy. Too bad they don't have Nick Vannett anymore. That would have made Murderer's Row for tight ends.
Exactly, dude. I mean, they really miss Nick Vannett. I bet they're jealous of our tight end situation over in Pittsburgh.
They're begging to give us our 5th-round pick back for him, I'm sure. Also, kind of a stupid storyline, but something that was going on just to create news in the offseason was when everyone was talking about super utility man for the Saints, Taysom Hill. Apparently, they think he's a franchise quarterback. Drew Brees is coming back, but Teddy Bridgewater is also a free agent. What do you make of it? I mean, I know Taysom Hill is explosive and he's awesome, but the dude has 119 career passing yards, and Benny Snell ran for more yards this year than Taysom Hill has in his entire career. And he's 29. Aren't we blowing this out of proportion like a lot?
It was completely blown out of proportion. I don't know what Pro Football Talk Florio is on. He created this narrative that he could be a starter by posting about it and then saying that people to deny that thought that he could be a starter are dumb. But, I mean, I want some of whatever he's smoking because it sounds really good. Because the dude attempted, 9 passes this past season. And he obviously did not start. They lost their starting quarterback for 6 games. And you know who they started? Teddy Bridgewater. You know how many times Taysom Hill still threw? I doubt it was in that span. I didn't look back at it, but I thought it was the stupidest thing ever.
Oh, you want to know what's crazy?
That they would even... What?
I remember hearing his argument why Bridgewater started, and it was so asinine. He said something like Sean Payton didn't want the rest of the NFL to know that they had a secret weapon because he was going to be a restricted free agent. How insane is that? You play to win the game, to quote Herman Edwards. If you're not going to be starting your best chance to win, what are you doing? Why even bother? That's insane. I don't know. It just made me mad. And I was like, look, I like Taysom Hill, but he's not a franchise quarterback, and it's insane to even think that he is.
Just a jack of all trades. He's really cool. He's a really cool gadget player that can play special teams, can block punts, can run down people on the kick return unit. And he could throw a pass here and then he could catch a touchdown. He could do a really cool bunch of stuff.
He's Cordell Stewart on steroids.
Gadget player the Saints are using perfectly in their system. He does not belong as just a quarterback. It's just not what he's going to be ever. And even his tape at BYU sucks. His tape at BYU as a quarterback sucks. It's really bad. I don't know what people see in him. He's so inaccurate.
And why does everyone hate on our man's Teddy Bridgewater?
I don't know, man. Teddy Bridgewater started for 6 games, went 6-0, and it's been the quietest 6-0 ever because he's just not he's not super great. He's a pretty good game manager, but he's still really good. I don't understand, man. I take Teddy Bridgewater over Kirk Cousins any day.
I second that. But anyways, I figured that'd be something we could both get on a pedestal for. The New York Giants have cut their defensive captain, linebacker Alec Ogletree, who was acquired in a trade 2 years ago. I remember when that happened. He has 674 tackles during his 7-year career. The Giants saved over $8 million in cap space by doing so. Ogletree was a guy who I thought was pretty good with the Rams, but kind of disappeared with the Giants. That's a bad defense, so it kind of makes sense. But he's not a name I'd be looking for if I were, any team. He's not high on a priority list here.
I actually like Alec Ogletree. I wish he didn't die with the Giants. But the Rams had the same problem that the Giants just did now. The Rams dumped him off when he was good for a very low amount because he had demanded so much money, and he's just been quiet. I actually like him as a flyer for a team, not for Pittsburgh, too expensive, but as a flyer for a team that's maybe better, that's got a little bit more pieces around him, I think that he could be a nice veteran addition.
You don't think you could possibly replace Mark Barron for a cheap price?
No. I think he's going to be a little bit more expensive than Mark Barron.
How old is Ogletree? 29?
I want to say 32, but that's like, I'm taking a shot in the dark. I have no idea how actually old
Want to
he
check
is.
that real quick? You are checking it.
Yeah, I'm checking it. He is 28.
I see. The Steelers are pretty well known for not signing defenders over the age of 30 to contracts that are more than the veteran minimum. So he
Those
does.
just don't have money anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
I'm looking at the bottom tier guys. I'm looking at some bottom of the barrel dudes when it comes to free agency. That's what I'm thinking. I'm keeping my hopes really low. I'm thinking about like the backup safety to the backup safety here, and the backup linebacker to the backup linebacker when it comes to free agency for the Steelers this year.
The free agency wish list might be re-signing Nick Vannett to the veteran minimum.
That's about it, yeah. Steelers are very sad in cap space right now. They could be helped with the new CBA because there's some stuff we didn't talk about. Something I should mention. I don't really understand it, so I can't really explain it very well. But the 30% rule, right? It's a rule that doesn't allow teams to forward all their money into next seasons, and they need to keep 30% of the contract, at least 30% of the contract in the year, in one of the, I don't know, I'm confused. Anyway, just to cut it short because I don't understand it, with that being eliminated in the CBA, which we didn't mention because I don't exactly understand it, the Steelers would be able to move a lot of Ben Roethlisberger's money and clear up $9 million in cap space from that, and then they would also be able to clear cap space by extending Cameron Hayward because that same rule is gone. So there's a lot of things. And then with cap space going up, there will be a little bit more wiggle room for that. So, I mean, our hopes could go up, but I mean, then again, every single team is going to be getting more cap space. So people on this market will be more expensive. So still don't get your hopes up.
Let's shift gears to a lovely Mr. Peter King, a guy whom Steelers fans already love. In case you didn't already think he was a dummy, I found an actual article that suggests that King thinks that he wants the Steelers to go sign Jameis Winston, sit for a year, and get him ready to succeed Ben Roethlisberger. There's just so much insane about that statement, and I didn't think Austin would believe me, so I had to attach the actual link to the article. But it's a thing, so you can tell it's peak off-season time.
I mean, why sign Jameis Winston when you could sign Tom Brady, let him sit for a year, and then you have Tom Brady succeed Ben Roethlisberger? That's some big brain IQ right there.
I think they should sign Terry
King didn't
Bradshaw.
think of that.
I think they should sign Terry Bradshaw to replace Ben Roethlisberger.
I agree. Dude, I think we should get paid for our show because we say some really smart stuff.
Yeah,
here.
We do. We deserve to be paid. I
mean, look at Peter King. Like, he's just so intelligent with how he votes in the Hall of Fame, with the things he suggests. Like, I mean, dude gets paid for that. Why can't we get paid to say Terry Bradshaw should come back to the Steelers and succeed Ben Roethlisberger?
It's not a hot take because he used to play for the Steelers.
Exactly. Big brain, high IQ.
Speaking of big brained, it's something you like to say, Austin, and I thought about it immediately when I read this headline. Former TCU and Seattle Seahawks quarterback Trevon Boykin sentenced to 3 years in prison after beating his girlfriend in 2018. And it's like you say, Austin, it's quite simple for these athletes. Just don't hit or beat your woman, or really any woman. That's it. I know it's pretty complicated, but that's all there is to it.
You could lead off with that. You had to say, "Oh yeah, I thought of you right when I saw this."
Well, no. I'm sorry, but I think about. I'm sorry, but I thought about your statement. How it's quite simple. You just don't do it.
Made me laugh. I heard you say it, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, I thought of you." Yeah, he beat his wife and got sent to prison. But no, it is really, really simple. It's a hard equation for some athletes to understand, but if you don't beat women, you tend to not go to prison, and you tend to make a lot of money, especially when you're an athlete. So don't do it. It's if it wasn't clear already, just don't beat women. It's really, really easy.
Well, I'm sorry I butchered that, buddy. It's late.
I was joking. It made me laugh.
No, I know, but nah. Let's just move on. The Redskins cut tight end Jordan Reed. Poor Jordan Reed has had like a million concussions. He suffered one in the preseason before I drafted him in a fantasy league where there's no free agency, and I had to hold on to him the whole year, where he spent on the sidelines and on injured reserve. So officially his 7th concussion. We don't know if he's potentially had more undiagnosed. It took him 6 months to recover from it since he just got cleared from it. He said he still wants to play though. I'd be shocked if he does anything more than training camp with the team.
I think for his own health, he shouldn't play. I mean, at this point, maybe he already has CTE from 7 concussions. Like, that is no joke. A short story outside of football. I have a friend that has suffered exactly 7 concussions, and he's messed up. Like, not CTE messed up, but, like, his memory's gone. He said he's had to go see doctors and stuff, and he's had a complete personality change. And he says this, like, we talk about it, and like it's known, like, and it's just kind of crazy. Like, having 7 concussions is going to mess you up. Like, I joke that he could have CTE, but like, it's not really a joke with how bad it's been. And the last one was terrible. The last one I remember seeing it. It was from Keanu Neal in the preseason in the Falcons game. And it was a tough one. It obviously kept him out for 6 months, and he just had so many concussions. In college, you're not even eligible to play anymore after 5 concussions. Like, you're not allowed because it's just not good for your overall health. And he's at 7, and the 7th just took, again, 6 months to recover for it. I don't think he's going to last with the team. And I think that might be the best blessing for him if he isn't already screwed up in the head from how the concussions he's gotten, between the memory loss and all the stuff that can cause. I hope the best for him. I hope he doesn't make a team because of that. Because I don't want to see the man get hurt any more than he already has.
I agree with your sentiment, Austin. Elsewhere around the league, the Chicago Bears have released cornerback Prince Amukamara and wide receiver Taylor Gabriel. Gabriel could be an interesting option if he's cheap enough. I think he'd be a nice slot option.
And Gabriel, I've seen him flash before, and he played with Mitchell Trubisky, which is part of the reason why he was bad. I mean, he had a really bad year last year, so I think part of it is on him. But, like, he was interesting with the Falcons. He was interesting with the Browns. He's always been interesting. He peaked with the Bears in his first season with them. But I think that after the bad season like this, he could come for cheap, and he could be a free agent the Steelers get as a steal. Maybe. It depends on how much he demands on the market.
Ravens defensive coordinator Don Martindale has become the highest paid defensive coordinator in the league with a 3-year extension. Seems like a good move, I think. I mean, maybe they're paying him a bit much, but he had a pretty good year.
Yeah, the defense started off rough, but as soon as Jefferson went down and Clark came out, I felt like they got all their stuff together. So I feel like it is probably deserved to keep this team mostly together.
Browns offensive tackle Greg Robinson is facing 20 years in prison after it was discovered that he had 157 pounds of marijuana on him. That's like half his body weight. What is he doing?
And he knows he was out of the league because I'm pretty sure he's a free agent. Actually, I'm not pretty sure. I know he's a free agent. So he knew he wasn't getting another contract. He's like, I've been from the Rams to the Lions. The Browns aren't even going to want me, and their O-line sucks.
He's bad.
He's like, I need to make some money real quick. He's like, let me just invest my money in marijuana, and then he got caught. So, just a normal amount of marijuana. 157 pounds. Great stuff.
Great stuff for other NFL teams. The Detroit Lions are apparently talking with other teams about trading their top cornerback, Darius Slay. He truly is one of the top shutdown corners in the league. Also, Thaddeus Moss is not going to be participating in the NFL Combine, at least in some workouts. He measured in at under 6'2", so that's not good. I don't know. I think everyone's too fixated on the Combine, but I can't see how this helps him.
Not at all. This has got to be killing his stock because he's like, at that height, you're like basically a wide receiver, man. Like
a short one.
And I was, yeah. And this came out before he said that. What's it called? Before he said he wasn't doing the combine, and so I was like, people were saying like he better run fast as hell if he's going to be that short. And then now we don't know how fast he really is, other than game speed we can see from tape. But I'm pretty sure that this has taken him from maybe like a second rounder, third rounder in media eyes to fourth or fifth. Like right now, it's not looking good for him as a tight end. He definitely is going to need time to develop.
And even then,
because he's not tight end height.
Even then, it might not be enough. If you're just not big enough, you're not big enough. It's pretty tough to overcome that, especially at that position.
Yeah, you might literally have to change to wide receiver, which wouldn't be ideal for at least the Steelers.
So that's all we have right now in terms of NFL stuff. Is there anything else going on that we missed?
Don't think so.
Alrighty then. So we did want to take one last look at the 2019 season. Again, the Steelers finished 8-8, started 0-3, and then got to 8-5. We're in the 6th seed. Had a big showdown with the Bills where they could have taken control of the 5th seed and then lost 3 straight. Finished 8-8, missed the playoffs. Obviously, they lost Roethlisberger very early in the year. Alternated between Mason Rudolph and Duck Devlin Hodges. Where are you now that we are a couple months removed from the season? What are you going to remember when you think about the 2019 Pittsburgh Steelers?
I'm going to choose to think of happy thoughts. I'm going to think that's the year we got Hall of Famer Minkah Fitzpatrick. So what are you going to think of the 2019 season?
Yeah, I'm still going to remember in a more positive light. I'm going to remember it probably more fondly than the 9-6-1 2018 team. Yeah, it finished badly, but it felt like for the first time in a long time the Steelers truly had an elite defense. And even though they were really missing their top running back most of the year, their top quarterback most of the year, were really without a top tight end most of the year, and their top receiver had a really bad year. I still think about the way the team fought back and how they were dead in the water at 1-4, and all of a sudden they won 6 of their next 7 games, 7 of their next 8 games, and they were in position. And yeah, the way things ended were really unfortunate, but I think it kind of showed just how the team really was, and that once they finally got made and teams knew how to beat them, there wasn't much you could do about it. But I'm proud of the way the team fought, and I think that they laid some good building blocks for what they could be next year. And when I think of the 2019 team, I'll think of the defense, and I'll remember the fun of Duck Mania. And I think in terms of signature moments from the season, I think about beating Cleveland in Pittsburgh. I think about the Monday night wins over the Dolphins and Bengals, and I think also about Adam Vinatieri missing that field goal. Those are the top moments that come to mind to me.
Think about destroying the Chargers with Devlin Hodges coming in and absolutely wrecking them. I mean, the score got close at the end, but I remember when that was 24-0 and Devin Bush had a touchdown, and it's a good game.
I also remember the Rams game being the first time I really thought that it was an elite defense. And I know that the Rams offense, it wasn't as good this year as it was the previous year, but they held that offense to 10 offensive points, and all day it just never felt like the Rams were going to move the ball. That was the first time I really felt like, wow, this defense is special.
Yeah, man, and it definitely turned out to be special. I mean, how many times has the defense led the league in both takeaways and sacks? Like, they were opportunistic if I've ever seen one. There's not really been many defenses like that.
And then
I hope they can keep it up.
Oh, absolutely. And then low points of the season, there's obviously the blowout loss to New England. There's the Mason Rudolph, Myles Garrett incident. There's Ben Roethlisberger being injured and out for the season. The James Conner fumble in San Francisco. The Juju Smith-Schuster fumble in Baltimore. Any of the last 3 losses. I think Roethlisberger going down with that injury or Smith-Schuster fumbling probably has to be.
Yeah, that's one of the most disappointing. That San Francisco game, man, 5 turnovers in that game. And they kept it so close to Mason Rudolph. That hurts still. And the Ravens game. Those 2 games, you're right. They just kind of sting. So it could have been so different. I really, really thought that had Juju not fumbled, Duck Hodges was going to take the Steelers down the field. I remember that game vividly because I remember anger.
Ola Adeni.
I remember. Oh yeah, the Ola Adeni. I was thinking more of the Steelers' idea of deferring in overtime, where everyone was angry about it. And we're just like, nah, defense is lit, and they were lit, and then the offense screwed it up. So that game is vivid.
Sore spot. It's definitely a sore spot. But I think it's time to turn the page here, and we'll be moving into Season 5 of the podcast. Hard to believe we're already there. But as we get into the off-season, we'll be talking about specialists on our next episode. So look for that probably sometime next week, right?
Yeah, it should be soon. We'll be getting right into the draft process. At the moment, we only have before the draft coming up.
Indeed. So, Austin, I want to thank you for your efforts and your contributions to the podcast. As always, it's been wonderful the last 4 seasons, and I'm looking forward to a terrific Season 5 as we get ready for the 2020 season. Thank you so much.
Man, I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you.
Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you have any questions about the show or for us to answer about the Steelers, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our episodes posted under our name on SoundCloud and YouTube, and you can visit our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Thanks again, Austin, and thank you for listening to Season 4 of the podcast. We appreciate it. And we'll be back shortly to get started with Season 5, and we'll be starting to talk about the 2020 NFL Draft. It'll be here before you know it. So until next time, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a terrific night and day.
Bye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.